Okay, so let's do this. What do we know? We already know the Pythagorean theorem, but we're going to redo it, okay? We're going to call it, instead of Pythagorean theorem, we're going to go, our objective is Pythagorean theorem. Hey, a little history lesson. 3,000 years ago, if you're wealthy and you were a Greek citizen, you got to sit around and think about things. And everybody else got to build pyramids and work and slave and die. But if you were wealthy and you were a Greek citizen, you got to sit around and think. Well, Pythagoras had a school of philosophy. He was a wealthy Greek citizen, and his students, and they'd sit around and think about great things. So he's credited with the Pythagorean theorem, but the history is that possibly one of his students came up with this. But since he was the teacher of the school, he got credit. So 3,000 years ago, this guy's still famous, right? So what did he come up with? Well, that instead of A, B, and C, that, call this the leg, and the hypotenuse, right? Hypotenuse is always the longest side, and it's always opposite 90, okay? The hypotenuse is always the longest side in a right triangle. It's always opposite 90, okay? So instead of a squared plus b squared equals c squared, which is what you're familiar with, not every triangle is labeled ABC. In fact, if you take a look at my example 1, there's my favorite triangle, PIG, triangle pig, right? So instead of a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it really is just leg squared plus the other leg squared equals the hypotenuse squared, okay? So in example 1, find the missing side of PIG. That would be a leg, and that's my other leg, which makes that the hypotenuse. So I'm going to go 8 squared plus 6 squared equals, well, actually it's called little g. It'd be little g because we label it as angle, capital letter for the angle, and opposite side is the same letter but small case. So we're going to go 8 squared plus 6 squared equals little g squared, which is the hypotenuse. And then 8 squared is 64. 36 equals little g squared. Add them together and I get 100 equals little g squared. Square root both sides. I'm not going too fast, am I? Grace, will you stop me if I get going too fast? You got this, right? And square root of 100 is 10. Now this is one of the perfect ones. This one's a nice one because this is a perfect right triangle, meaning that all of the numbers turn out to be nice whole numbers. That doesn't always happen, okay? All right. Example 2. Find the missing sides of this triangle. Well, let's first of all let's give it a name, okay? Let's give it a name. Anna, give me a name. What do you want to call it?
FOX.
Oh, I like. I've never FOX. Triangle Fox. Clever. I like that. Okay. So it doesn't have to be ABC. So what we want to do is find little x. Do we agree with that? Side x. So instead of leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared, I'm going to go x squared plus 15 squared equals 17 squared. Are we okay with that? Now in middle school, sometimes they'll subtract the 15 squared first. Have you guys seen that? Sometimes, though, they'll change that to 225 and 289. Which way do you guys like? Do you guys prefer me to make that what it is, 225, or do you want me to subtract it first? Does not matter.
Probably make what it is.
I think that's easier, too. I agree. That way kids don't get confused. 225, 289. Okay, that's 15 squared. I agree, Tava. 15 squared is 225, and 17 squared is 289. So now I'm going to go minus 225. Minus 225. Let's see, 289 minus 225, and I get an answer of 64. Right? square root, and x is 8. Now this is another one of the perfect ones. Okay, so an 8, 15, 17 is a perfect right triangle. I like that. But they're not all that way. So let's look at example 3 again. They're not all like that at all, okay? Maddie, give me a name. I need a name for this triangle. What do you want to call it?
OMG.
OMG. You guys are great. I love it. Clever. Okay. So what you're going to try and find is little m, right? Because if that's angle m, that's little m, right? So, all right, let's put leg squared plus leg squared equals hypotenuse squared. So I'm going to go 4 squared plus 10 squared equals m squared, right? 16 plus 100 equals m squared. 116 equals m squared. Take the square root of both sides and the square root of 116. Now this time we're not going to get such a nice number, okay? We're going to get square root of 116, and I get about, and we'll round to the nearest tenth, round to the 10th. So I'm going to round that to about a 10.8, okay? 10 about. So I'm going to say, I like this little squiggle. This little squiggle. The little squiggle means approximately. Oh, that's supposed to be an 8. There we go. Approximately equal to 10.8. Okay, everybody agree with that? That's what the squiggle is. If you can't do a squiggle, I can't. That means also approximately equal to. I'm not very good at my squiggles. Look pretty bad, don't they? Tavia, you'll love this story. When I was in middle school, I'd take an art class, right? Terrible at art. Terrible. But my aunt was the art teacher, so I got a B. Tells you how bad I am when my aunt only gives me a B, not an A, huh?
That sounds familiar.
I knew you liked that story. Oh, my wife is an artist too, and I just, and then we do all, she wants, and then my wife, I know I'm on camera, my wife loves to do art night where we all get together. She takes out the paint, and we sit around as a family and paint and do art, right? And it's like, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's really good. Oh, that's really, oh, Bill, that's kind of nice. Anyway, moving on. So now, determine if the right triangle is acute, obtuse, or right, okay? So if a squared plus b squared is less than c squared, okay? If this is smaller than this, then that's got to be obtuse. If c is bigger, it's obtuse, okay? If a squared plus b squared is greater than c squared, then it's acute, because these two are bigger, okay? Whichever one's bigger. If the hypotenuse is bigger, then it's got to be an obtuse triangle. If the hypotenuse is smaller, then it's going to be acute. Okay, so let's try it. 3 squared plus 5 squared, and I'll do 7 squared, okay? So I'm leaving the symbol open for right now. I don't know what the symbol's going to be, but I'm leaving it open, okay? 9 plus 25, 49, right? Let's see here. What's 9 plus 49? That's 34. So 34 is less than 49, right? So that means the c squared is bigger. That means the hypotenuse is bigger. If the hypotenuse is bigger, then the hypotenuse is going to be something like this. It's got to be obtuse. Does that make sense? If this side is bigger, if that side's bigger, stretches it out more, then it's got to be obtuse. Okay, let's take a look at the second one. 5 squared plus 12 squared, I don't know. Is that equal to, less than, greater than 13 squared? Okay, let's try it. I'm going to have a 25 plus 144, 169. Okay, I just squared those. I just squared those in my head. 169 is equal to 169. What does that mean if they're equal? That means Pythagorean theorem works. And it only works on right triangles. That means that if it's equal, it must be a right triangle. It will look like this. 5, 12, 13. All right, let's see how this one works. 12 squared plus 15 squared something, 17 squared. Okay, so 144 plus 225 and 189. Okay, I just happen to know some of these. Been doing math way too long, huh? Okay, what's 144 plus 225? I get 369, 189. Okay, so that means c squared is smaller. So if the hypotenuse is smaller, it's got to look like this, okay? So here's my 12, 15, and my 17. So this must be an acute, because that angle is smaller, acute triangle. All right? Yeah, Grace?
Isn't 17 squared 289?
Yes. Think, Grace. Yes. And I was acting all smarty pants, and I wasn't, was I? Thanks, Grace. Okay, now, last but not least, the Pythagorean Theorem is actually used a lot. I don't know if your dad or mom are in construction or builders or whatever, but the Pythagorean Theorem is used a lot. I mean, it's so easy. Anywhere there's a right angle, you can use the Pythagorean Theorem. It's used in physics all the time. So guy wire. Now, guy wire is just support. So say I've got a 100-foot tower. Here's my tower. Okay, and a guy wire supports it, right? There's my wire. I know the tower has to be 100 feet, and I'm going to attach it 30 feet away, right? So before I go out and spend a lot of money on wire, I better know how much more wire I need, because this wire is expensive, right? So instead of just going to, Marston's and saying I want a bunch of wire, I probably ought to know how much I need. If I'm too short, boy, I blew that one. If I'm too long, I waste money, okay? So I'm just going to go 30 squared plus 100 squared equals my wire squared, right? Calvin, you guys watching? Of course you are.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, so 30 squared, 900. 100 squared, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros equals W squared. If I add these together, I get 10,900 equals W squared. I'll square root both sides. Square root, and what is square root of square root of 10,900? And I get about 104.4. That can't be, yeah, I can. Yeah, 104.4 seems right. 104.4, and that'd be in terms of feet of wire, okay? What do you think? Pretty easy? I mean, we should know Pythagorean Theorem by now. I mean, I believe the middle school teachers do teach this, right? Hope so. If they don't, then I'm